Okay. Grab all the gusto you can, or perhaps the fairy tale ending. You only go around once in life, so you got to grab all the gusto you can. Some of you may remember the television commercial, but what exactly is gusto? Webster defines it as hearty or keen enjoyment. And according to the commercial, you gain by drinking a certain brand of beer. Schlitz. I don't know about that, but the question that the commercial raises is very important. As human beings, we all are looking for gusto. But where do you find this elusive gusto? What road do we take to arrive at gusto? The psalmist begins by telling us that the road to avoid when seeking happiness, when seeking gusto, the road to avoid is ungodly counsel. That is counsel with the wicked. If you want to go to Tallahassee from here, you don't turn left on Highway 10. That road would lead you to Pensacola, not Tallahassee. The psalmist is clear, he's crystal clear. If you want to find happiness, if you want to find joy, if you want to find gusto, do not go this way of the ungodly. Do not seek counsel with wicked. Do not seek counsel with the unrighteous. So where then do we find gusto? Where do we find true happiness? Well, a good place to begin is in Yahweh's Word. Psalm 1 begins, "Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful." Psalm 1, verse 1. Blessed is often translated happy in scriptures. Blessed are the pure in heart. Happy are the pure in heart. Here the psalmist is saying, happy is the person who does not walk with the wicked, who does not stand nor linger with sinners, who does not sit with the scornful. Happiness has more to do with what we are than who we are or what we have. Happiness at one time was a chicken in every pot. Then it was a car in every garage. Too often we look in the wrong place for happiness. Too often we expect a fairy tale ending. If you turn to the last chapter of the book of Cinderella, and they lived happily ever after. If you turn to the last chapter of the book of Sleeping Beauty, and they live happily ever after. And finally, if you turn to the last chapter of the book of Snow White, the verse reads, "And they live happily ever after." We all long for the fairy tale ending. We have yearned for it since our childhood. We just want to be able to live happily ever after. We desire happiness. We long for it. We search for it. And we want it in our lives. Our search for that fairy tale ending will often cause us to seek happiness from sources other than Yahweh. A place where Yahweh is no longer at the center of our life. Our Lord has been replaced by another person, possession, or pleasure, or ideology. This leading away is typically a very subtle thing, but if we continue to stray over time, we will find ourselves falling into a happiness trap. If you seek happiness at the end, if you seek happiness as the end in itself, you will never find it. It will always escape you. It's like catching a soap bubble. You think you have it, and then it bursts, and it's gone. And there's nothing left. The scriptures are not confusing. They are clear. Happy is the person who does not walk with the wicked, who does not stand or linger with sinners, who does not sit with the scornful. One form of happiness and a tremendous blessing is having children. One of the great things in having little ones around us is to remind us of the growth process. Many of you will remember when your children or your grandchildren were able to sit up. At first, we watched their attempts to stay upright without slumping over. Then we get excited when they learn to crawl and pull themselves up, to stand. Then they start walking by holding our hands or supporting themselves by holding onto furniture. Then it isn't long until they start walking on their own. That is the growth process. Slow. As we mature, we learn to sit, then to stand, then to walk. It's a natural progression. Sit, stand, walk. But did you notice in the first verse of Psalm 1 how the person's progression is backwards? The growth is reversed. The person begins by walking in the counsel of the wicked. Then they stand in the way of sinners. And finally they sit in the seat of the scornful. For them it's reversed. It's walk, stand, and sit. The momentum is going backwards. It is reversed until they stop completely. They begin by being able to walk, and then they finish immobilized. Now, we normally do not jump right into a middle of sin. Usually it progresses. It goes in stages. Teenagers or adults, for the matter, start to hang out with the wrong crowds. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just hanging. But fairly soon, they are no longer walking. They are standing in a group. Eventually, they are immobilized by their walk, doing the same ungodly things. Paul wrote the familiar warnings when he shares the truth. Evil company corrupts good habits. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. And you might have heard these words from your parents or grandparents. I know I did it a number of times. You're judged by the company you keep. Guilt by association. Here's a story about a farmer who wanted to buy a donkey. The man wanted to buy a donkey, and he agreed with his owner that he should try out the animal before he bought it. So he took the donkey home and put it in the yard with his other donkeys. The new animal left all the others and joined up at once with the donkey that was the most idle and ate the most. When he saw this, the man put a halter on him, and he led him immediately back to his owner. When he was asked how in such short time he could have tried him out, he answered, I don't need to try him out. I know that he will be just like the one he chose for companion. This is precisely why Paul shares with the believers gathered in Corinth. evil company corrupts good habits. The psalmist goes on to say in Psalm 1, verse 2, but his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and in his law does he meditate day and night. What delights you? Is it seeing the stock market rising? Is it getting a promotion at work? Is it getting straight A's on a report card? Is it buying a new dress? These things might make you happy for a few hours or a few days. Yet here in Psalm 1, we learn that a person who wants to experience real gusto, to experience lasting happiness, is delighted when they read and meditate on Yahweh's word. Now you may ask, what can be so exciting about sitting around reading and meditating on the scriptures? For many, 15 or 30 minutes spent in daily devotion seems like a long time. But the psalmist did not spend all day reading the scriptures. What he did constantly, day and night, was think about what scriptures were saying, what they meant, how they could be applied in his life. That is meditating on Yahweh's word. Now remember, the psalmist did not have a pocket-sized copy of the Old Testament to put in his pocket, to pull out and read during the day. So all week he spent time thinking about what he had heard on the Sabbath, meditating on what Yahweh's word meant in his life. What is practical for us is this: to read a few verses from Yahweh's word when you rise in the morning, then you meditate on them during the day. What is Yahweh saying to you? How can the scriptures you read that morning be applied to your life? David says the righteous meditate day and night, meaning at all available moments. To meditate means to think seriously about Yahweh's word, even when you do not have the text right in front of your eyes. If we meditate, if we focus on Yahweh's word, then Satan and the world are just a mere annoyance. But if we allow our focus to be compromised, then we put ourselves and true happiness at risk. The psalmist also had something to say about compromise. We cannot and we must not compromise with that which is wrong. If we do, we allow evil to work its way into our lives. It often happens slowly, subtly, that we hardly realize that it's taken place. But over time, evil will immobilize you and strip you of your gifts. There is an old children's story about a bird. He meets a fisherman with a can of worms. The bird's hungry, and he asks the man for one worm. The fisherman says, "Sure, all I ask in return is one of your feathers." Well, a feather for a worm seemed reasonable exchange to the bird, so he made the trade. The next day, the bird was hungry again. He weighed the inconvenience of searching for food against the expediency of trading with the fisherman and decided in favor of the easier way. After all, it was only one feather. But after a few weeks of making such a trade, the bird had exchanged so many feathers that he couldn't fly. At this point, the fisherman picked up the fat, naked bird and had a delicious meal. It's very easy for the same thing to happen to us spiritually. We make an unwise decision. We say that it will not affect us, and in fact, we may not even be able to see the effect at all. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, One rationalization leads to another, until before we know it, we find ourselves down a road that we never intended to travel. We need to resist even the slightest temptation to compromise our convictions. We need to meditate on Yahweh's word and ignore the words of Satan, his whispering in our ear. Oh, go on. Yahweh won't care if you eat that fruit. The fairy tale ending is not attainable through things of this world. Happiness does not come from others. It comes by abiding in Yeshua, the Son of Yahweh. And by abiding, the fruit of the Spirit will be manifested in your life. Go for the gusto. Be a blessing, and let true happiness fill you to overflowing. Meditate on Yahweh's word. Delight in Yahweh's word. Be conformed to the image of Messiah, and let him take you to glory. Yahweh bless.